At a seminar, a friend of mine was really upset. Let's say he was furious that he couldn't sit next to me. The place was packed, and unfortunately all the seats were filling up there in the front row. Now it seemed impossible to solve, and then the speaker of the seminar, Marshall Silver, says, "Why don't you just move your chair?" And this is a valuable lesson about limiting beliefs, obstacles, and having creative solutions. So let me share this story. I really enjoyed attending Marshall Silver seminars. He's an entertainer, an hypnotist, speaks on business, entrepreneurship, consults, I mentioned back in the day, with large companies and things. And in Las Vegas, when I first moved out here, he did have a hypnotic show that was really fun and entertaining. I think it was at the Stratosphere at the time. But he also had a lot of seminar events in the various hotels and the big ballrooms, banquet rooms that were about transformation and personal growth and entrepreneurship. I loved going to these. They were free events, and then I believe, I don't know if there was I imagine maybe there was a paid event. I don't remember. I think they were free, or they weren't really expensive at all. So I attended many of these. At the time I was working at the New York Casino, and I invited one of my friends, we'll say his name was Rick. He was super intense, man. He worked 2 40-hour jobs and had, I think, a morning off on one job and a morning off on another one, and then evenings on another one. But he worked 7 days a week. He was intense. And there's more stories we'll share about that. But in this case, I invite him to one of these Marshall Silver seminars. He agrees to go. And if you've ever attended a lot of seminars, you can line up at the door. There weren't assigned seats. So when you walk into the room, it's a very big room. You walk down a center aisle, and then there's rows of seats on the left and right. Now, I mentioned to him, I've been to these before, and people, when that door opens, it is a race to get your seat. And we're sitting in the front row. That was just the way I operated, sitting in the front row. The doors open. I bolt down the center. I get to the very front. I go to the right, the very first chair, right in the aisle, front row. Marshall Silver's already on stage, seeing everybody fill this room. The seats next to me fill in. I am so excited to be there. I'm probably grinning from ear to ear. What I don't realize is Rick was kind of lagging behind me. So when I sat down and all the seats filled in the front, I didn't realize he was about 4 or 5 seats down. He was furious. He stood up yelling at me in front of the speaker, Marshall Silver, before this thing starts, saying that I was selfish and I should have saved him his seat. And it was intense. So everybody sits in their seats. The event's ready to start. And Marshall Silver says, "Hey, just 1 second. I just want to kind of understand something and clear something up before we get started." And he asks me my name. I said, "Yeah, my name is Robert." He says, "You attend a lot of these, right?" I said, "Yeah, I've been to a lot." And he says, "You really enjoy it?" I said, "Yeah, I really enjoy it." And he's like, "Who's this here?" I said, "Oh, it's my friend Rick. We work together." Thought I'd invite him out. And he's like, "Well, I saw you, some kind of, argument was going on. What was seeming to happen? Can you explain?" And right away, my friend Rick gets up, rips me. This guy's selfish. This guy runs in here, doesn't save me a seat in front of this whole group. Now, there was probably, I would say, I'm just guessing, 150 people maybe in that event, maybe 200 or so. And yeah, I'm selfish. I didn't save him a seat. Rips me new one. He's furious. He's never been to one. This is his first one. It's supposed to be this fun experience. And as he's talking, Marshall is just listening to him, looking at him. And he says to him, "Well, why don't you just pick up your chair and move it next to your friend?" And he says, "I can't do that." He says all the chairs are organized in rows. And besides, if I took my chair and put it next to him, I'd be sticking out, odd right in the middle of the aisle. And he says, well, go ahead and move your chair to the center of the aisle. Whoever told you that there was a rule all these chairs need to be fixed in their place and stay in these organized rows? And my friend Rick is like, well, no one. And I wish I remembered the exact words that he'd said, Marshall, but he said something to the effect of, this is a good example of how we should look at our lives, right? We have fixed mindsets on things, that things should be a certain way when no one ever told us they need to be that way, and we live in those limitations. One, it's a valuable lesson. It was over, I'd say, 25 years ago. I still can remember it. I think because there was an emotional connection. Here I'm being called out in front of this whole group, and I remember just thinking, oh man, this is going to be, I can't believe this, man. I want to be under the radar, and this whole thing comes up. My buddy's pissed, and everything's smoothed out. But it was a really great lesson. I'm glad that Marshall Silver took that time to call that out in the beginning and share that lesson for the entire group. I'll share another story where we went to another event. It was at the Hard Rock with Marshall Silver. That was more of his show, his performance, and he hypnotizes my friend Rich. It's going to blow your mind how that one went. I will share that one in the future. But for now, focus on that. So what are some of the things, I guess you could say, maybe current problems or challenges that exist in your life where you're seeing the limitations and barriers that you perceive to exist that appear to be a certain way where nobody's made that rule. Oftentimes we make up these rules and these limitations in our own mind, and we follow along on that. That was a great example. And I thought it was kind of the silliest thing, right? But who said the rows need to be organized in that way? Why can't you just pick your chair up and move it over? Very simple solution to something that we didn't think would be resolved. But think about that in your own life. What is it today? Something that you're trying to solve. What are those obstacles or barriers? And are those really true obstacles and barriers? Are those more your perception that can be holding you back from future opportunities? Thanks again. Have an amazing day, and we'll talk soon.